The Book of Boba Fett Chapter 7 has an identity crisis. Now, what the hell does that even mean? This finale wasn't bad per se, but I'm confused as to what the purpose of this story now is. This entire episode is one giant battle, and for the most part, I found it fairly entertaining. The action set pieces were cool. I liked for the most part all the different characters and the different kind of factions. Boba Fett riding the rancor was awesome, but throughout the episode, I questioned Boba Fett a lot. And it wasn't the decisions he was making, but his character motivations. So the first 3 episodes mostly set up Boba Fett's relationship to the Tusken Raiders. I would assume that them all getting killed is what would have been his motivation for wanting to rule Tatooine and keeping it a safe place, because he is tired of innocents getting hurt. Even though that doesn't really line up with what little of him we saw in the original trilogy, I could accept it for the sake of the story. But in Chapter 4, Boba tells Fennec that the reason he wants to rule Tatooine is because he is tired of bounty hunters getting killed by incompetent crime lords. This really has nothing to do with the Tusken Raiders, so I was hoping that in the final 3 chapters they would make that storyline more relevant. Chapters 5 and 6 didn't really involve Boba at all. Weird decision, but okay, fine. And now with this final chapter, I am confused as to what his motivations are. He keeps on telling the Pykes and Cad Bane that the people of Mos Espa are his people, and it is his job to protect them. Noble, I suppose, but this doesn't line up with the motivations he established earlier in the series. How does him wanting to stop bounty hunters from dying translate to him wanting to protect innocent people? I guess you could argue that he's just a good person now, and that he wants to destroy the like button for the YouTube algorithm because he knows that would make the gold man's day, but why say the whole line about bounty hunters then? So after the long battle, Boba saves the day and the streets of Mos Espa are now safe. Then completely out of the blue, Boba says that he's not sure that ruling Tatooine is for him and that someone else should do it. What? You're trying to tell me that this whole series was supposed to be about him becoming a more empathetic person, someone who wants to rule with respect, not fear. He was someone who wanted to protect his people from crime that has riddled the planet for decades, and when it's all said and done, Boba just goes, nah, this isn't for me? If someone is truly devoted to their ideals, they don't just abandon them because they don't think they are a good fit to uphold those ideals. Boba is committed to helping the people of Tatooine, but now he's just good? See why I say this show has an identity crisis? It doesn't know what it wants Boba to be. But the crux of the problems with the identity of the series lie with the Mandalorian. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse over and over again. We all know how peculiar it is that 2 of the episodes in the series don't feature Boba Fett outside of 1 minute. The storytellers set up an interesting question. Does Grogu really want to be a Jedi? Conceptually, this is a really interesting question. No one in Mando Season 2 asked Grogu what he wanted. Everyone just assumed taking him to the Jedi was what's best for him. Grogu makes a choice, and that choice is that he wants to be with Mando. This is compelling, but the problem here is that this happens in the Book of Boba Fett, which happens right after Mando Season 2. In the Mandoverse storyline, we watched 16 episodes of Mando trying to take Grogu to the Jedi and keeping him safe, which culminated in one of the best finales of a season I've seen in a long time. Then we get 4 episodes of Boba Fett, then there are 2 where Mando misses Grogu, and then Grogu and Mando are reunited again. The reunion between Mando and Grogu happens way too fast, and I can't help but ask myself, why did this story point have to happen in this series? In all seriousness, if you take Mando out of the series, does anything really change about the crime war between Boba and the Pykes? If Mando never shows up, Boba, Fennec, and the Vespas still set up their elaborate plan to defend Mos Espa, Cad Bane still shows up, there's still a big battle, Boba still rides the rancor, and he still likely wins. The only reason Mando was in this series was because Boba Fett was understaffed and needed more men, and they needed an excuse to get the people of Freetown to help out. But you could accomplish these goals rather easily and not involve Mando. Need extra muscle? Just have Boba recruit someone else. It could be a character we previously know, like Bosk, or it could be a completely new character. When it comes to Cobb Vanth and the people of Freetown, just have Boba show up there and tell them that Mando mentioned them once wants, and Boba knows he can trust them. Cobb Vanth would reject because he doesn't trust Boba. Then Cad Bane shows up and pisses off the town, and they join the fight later on anyway. It feels like the only reason Mando is in the series is because Lucasfilm knows he is a really popular character, so if he was in this series, it would draw in a larger audience. And for whatever reason, Lucasfilm wanted to rush Grogu's reunion with Mando. I don't understand why Lucasfilm couldn't do the exact same story but wait until Mando Season 3. This series has an identity crisis because I don't know what it was really about. Was this supposed to be a Mando Season 2.5 or contained story about Boba Fett? I would have been fine with either. If they wanted to tell a Captain America Civil War-esque story that tied in heavily to the rest of the canon, that would be really cool. And if they wanted to tell a focused character study on Boba Fett, that would also be awesome. But they tried to do both, and it's jarring. Many aspects of Boba's story are heavily underdeveloped. The Pyke Syndicate was an awful opposing force, probably one of the worst opposing factions in the entire franchise. I was hoping that the reason they were so underdeveloped was because the Pykes were really working for someone else more competent, and the end of this season would tease a larger threat for Boba to face. You're all probably thinking that I'm just disappointed because I didn't get Kira, but it's not that. I just felt that there needed to be someone else in charge because the Pykes themselves were so underdeveloped, and Kira would have filled that role. But the whole Pyke storyline is now over, okay, I guess. And they set up Cad Bane in a really cool way and just killed him off in his second episode. People may call me a hypocrite because what happened to Cad Bane here was very similar to Snoke. In their introduction, the storytellers are leading us to believe these characters are very important, and in their second appearance, they are just killed off. The difference here is that Snoke wasn't a pre-existing character that has been in the lore for over a decade. We know that Cad Bane also has a strong history with Boba Fett too. So when the audience thinks he's a big deal and the storytellers tell us he's a big deal, but killing him off like he wasn't a big deal is an awful way of not living up to the build-up the storytellers set up. And now he's gone. Wasted. Also, what was the point of the Pykes killing the Tusken Raiders? It didn't really change anything in this episode. When Boba Fett finds out, he gets angry for a second but wisely retreats, and then Cad Bane brings it up later, but it didn't change the fact that Boba was still gonna try and kill Cad Bane. Did they do this because they wanted us to hate the Pykes even more? The Pykes were an underwhelming villain anyway, so that didn't really work. Cad Bane should have been the one to kill the Tuskens. That way it gives Boba a more personal reason to want to kill Cad Bane. In short, the biggest problem with this series is that it doesn't know if it wants to be Mando Season 2.5 or a Boba Fett story. It mostly wants to be a Boba Fett story, but because 2 of the 7 episodes were devoted to Mando Season 2.5, the Boba Fett storyline feels rushed. The characters and their motivations are underdeveloped, and the villains are underdeveloped. This series could have really used those 2 extra episodes to flesh out Boba Fett's story more, but it is what it is. I'm gonna be working on a full-on season review of the Book of Boba Fett, so stay tuned for that. It will probably be out this upcoming Monday. Thank you everyone so much for watching another one of my videos. Don't forget to unite the Clot Squad, and I will see you guys next time.